Welcome everyone. Just sing with me, just flow with me. I don't even know where it's going, just lizrom, just to flow.
da
Shikoyach, I feel like singing the whole night, but I know that some people also came to learn, even though there's no difference, but we got to do both. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much everyone for joining us. It's been the most special few weeks. It's been the most special few weeks. It's also been the most confusing few weeks as Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. Definitely is, on the one hand, the most confusing few weeks. A good friend of mine today wrote me in an email. He said, it's true, there's a lot of confusion, but one thing definitely has become clear. He said, every box by now is a coffin, and every movement is dafuk. I'm going to explain what that means. I'll try to. Every box, anyone that's put into any box, every box is a coffin. Do you hear? This is very deep. Every box is a coffin, and every movement is dafuk, which that means like it's not really happening. Movements. It's not. B'ezrat Hashem, we're almost done with movements. Movements are least likely to move. If you ever noticed that, movements are least likely to move, and it's a beautiful time to live in, where the only thing you can get out of looking at the world right now and looking at what's going on in Eretz Yisrael is actually very much connected to what we're going to be learning about tonight. If you can't understand that the Ribbono Shel Olam truly, truly, truly believes in you, just in you, then we're not listening. And then we're not hearing the signs, we're not looking at the signs, we're not understanding what is coming down from Shemayim. But I think that all of us together, everyone feels so lonely, but I always feel like when we're here, all of us are just alone together. And that's already a chetzi nechama, that's a chetzi consolation. You know, we all know there's no leaders, we're not even waiting anymore. But at least we're all doing that together. We all feel like Yitomim, in a certain level, all of us together. So I'm very excited because the learning that we've been doing the last few weeks has been like none other. And I'm so thankful for everyone that's been coming to the learnings, both here and in Yerushalayim. It's been just really, really special. And a lot more on that in email, which we'll be sending out tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. Before anything, continue with the learning. First of all, Leilui Nishmat Eliezer ben Eliyahu Aryeh, Yitzchak Livracha, Zcharia ben Yaakov, Miriam bat Eliyahu, Zichronan Livracha. My grandmother Chaya Rachel Bas Tzvi Hirsch. I'm also doing it for the Atzlacha V'Tipul of Ruth bat Esther Shoshana, as well as the Refuah Shlema of Shlomo Yosef ben Esther, Alter Baruch ben Sarah, Michael Moshe Ze'ev ben Yehudis, Binyamin Nachman Mordechai ben Ilana, Shoshana Reza bas Ahuva, Shlomo Mendel ben Rachel, and Rav Nassim Daniel ben Malka. That last group of 7 names should not be here next week. So tonight we have something short, not too much out there. That could be misleading. That could be misleading. Last night in Simchat Shlomo we learned something that touched the heart. I think more than I really understood what was going to take place. Without getting too involved in the learning we did last night, which had to do only on Purim, one of the things we came up with in the story of the Megillat Esther is how really based on the halacha, when it comes to learning Megillat Esther and hearing the Megillah, it is absolutely forbidden to do any stops in the Megillah reading, as opposed to Kriyat Torah, which is Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, it's a bunch of stops. Megillat Esther is no stops. Megillat Esther is one long story. And it's Kedai, we'll be sending out last night's Shiur on an email tomorrow, but it's very, very important to learn last night's learning. Very important. I'm speaking to myself as well. My chavrusa in Los Angeles reminds me that I have to listen also to every shiur if I want to feel like I'm really with everyone here, and he's once again that he's right. So in last time we were learning that the whole story of the Megillah, the reason why you can't stop is because in our lives we make too many stops when we hit walls, when we hit brick walls, when we have very hard things happening to us in our life. We go through stops, we say, we make a stop and define ourselves. I hit a brick wall, I fell very low, this is who I am, this is who I must be. This is my goral, this is how you say goral, this is my lot. And what Megillat Esther, the whole story, what does it do to us? It reminds us to tell us, no. Instead of all those periods, put in commas and realize that life keeps on going on until you finish the story, until you read the whole story. And we spoke about that one of the saddest things in the world is we don't think that if we share our own story with someone, that they'll be interested in hearing it. It's important to always tell your own life story, to share about yourself. Rabbi Nachman says the closest man gets to God is not when he prays, it's when he tells God stories, which is really hitbodedut. The saddest thing and the most dangerous place to be in is when you think that if you actually got the omets, the courage and the strength to speak up and tell and say to somebody, listen, I really need to pour it out, but inside the back of your mind you're saying, they don't really care about what I have to say. And Megillat Esther, this energy of Purim comes and tells us, when you're really telling your own life story and you're not putting periods but you're putting commas, meaning you're seeing that you're just in the middle of the story, things keep on going on, that's the closest you could get to the Ribono Shel Olam, because this whole world is one big story. We look back at Yiddishkeit, there were so many moments where we were sure that this is it, not just period, exclamation point, end of story. First Beis HaMikdash, second Beis HaMikdash, the Inquisition, the Crusade, and obviously the 6 million. And somehow Purim has kept us alive because we know there's still a story taking place. We just have to be tested very closely to not stop reading, don't stop. We're continuing on. This brings us right into our Parsha, our Sefer, our beautiful third Sefer of the Torah, the Sefer which is least exciting than all the 5 Sfarim when you just learn it on the Pshat, the book of Korbanot, the book of sacrifices, Sefer Vayikra. How come everyone looks like they're in Tisha B'Av right now when I said that? Not anymore. Because really, when you say, let's go the depths of Sefer Vayikra, okay, let's go for a Shlomim, or like a Korban Ola, now let's do a Korban Mincha. No, I'm feeling a Chatat right now. That's where if I say to you, hey, let's learn Sefer Shmot, what do you want to start with? Paro's daughter, crossing the Red Sea, Kriyas Sefer Matan Torah, golden calf, you choose whichever one you want. It's plenty. Our hearts jump out to choose what we would most want to feel connected to. And yet, what do children start learning when they start learning Torah? They start with Sefer Vayikra. Children, do you know that children, we start learning through Sefer, we don't start Bereshit Bara Elokim, which you'd think would make perfect sense. The children should start learning this, No. What do we start with? Vayikra El Moshe. We start with Sefer Vayikra. There are many, many different learnings, very strong teachings to try to explain and understand why is it that we start Sefer Vayikra based on the Korbanot. Tonight, I want to talk very little about the Korbanot, but just focus about the first 3 words of the Parsha, based on a very beautiful, short piece from Rabbi Shlomo. Well, first of all, do we have Korbanos today? We don't. What do we have instead of Korbanot today? Davening. We have Tefillah. Now, how do you translate the word Korban into English? That's not exactly what it means. Because you don't sacrifice... What, sorry?
Yeah,
well, hold on, no. That's already a play on the word. That's sort of the deeper meaning. But no, Reb Tzvi is right. When you daven, do you sacrifice anything? I'd like to think that I put something on the altar and I'm sacrificing that kind of fire. Fire from Shemayim coming down and accepting my korban. Actually, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Rashar Hirsch, says korban doesn't come from the word sacrifice. It comes from the word willing to offer. Hamakriv. You're willing to offer something. Very big difference between sacrificing something and willing to offer something. Very, very different. That's first of all. But when you daven, what are you doing? What are you really doing? So the last few weeks we've been getting very intense about what an ideal minyan looks like. It's put a lot of dampers on people's, I know because the emails I'm getting after Shiur, it's put a lot of dampers on people's ideal minyans that they've been married to for 30 years, or shuls they founded, or, a lot of crazy stuff. When we talk about what an ideal minyan is, we spoke about an ideal minyan is that 10 people get together, 10 people that are crying over the same thing get together and daven together. That's an ideal minyan. That's what Chazal had in mind when they instituted 10 people to come and daven together. Not just numbers, not just an assembly of 10. 10 broken hearts davening for the same thing. A korban, like Reb Tzvi says, comes from the word karov, litkarev, to get close. The korbanot were in order to get close to the Ribono Shel Olam. You see what it is? After what we went through in Parshat Ki Tisa with the golden calf, Ki Tisa is a horribly traumatic experience which we're still suffering from till today. The golden calf. We're still suffering from it at a certain level till today. Hashem did forgive us, but we're still suffering from it. And what are we suffering from the most? The remedy for the suffering of Ki Tisa is by the fact that God gives us now korbanot, a medium through which to get close to the Ribono Shel Olam. But really it has to do with the 3 words of the Parsha, Vayikra El Moshe. Rav Soloveitchik said something amazing as well. I know these names we usually don't learn so much in here. It's not like, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Rav Soloveitchik, but this is one of the most important things I ever heard in my life. He says, the fact that a person, what defines a person? I am someone when I'm able to makriv something. I become human being, a Baal Bechira, someone that has a choice in this world, when I'm willing to offer something to the Ribono Shel Olam, I'm willing to sacrifice something. And the truth is, you can only sacrifice something which you have. If you don't have something, you can't sacrifice it. That's a very important thing to remember. You can only sacrifice something which you have already. So I want to offer a very, very hard, a very weird question. It's a very interesting question I've been thinking about a lot. Do you think it's possible that God gives you something and you're supposed to sacrifice it? I'm going to say that again. Do you think it's possible that God would give you something and you're supposed to give it up? You're supposed to offer it up? You're supposed to sacrifice it? You think Hashem can give you something, or you could attain something, but the goal of it is really to see if you're willing to give it up? Well, how do we know that to be the emes of all emes? Because what was the first real korban? The first real korban was Yitzchak Avinu. Now follow me with this. This is very, very important. All right? This is very important. According, and this we're going to learn for a second, the whole book of Vayikra, the whole book of offering to God, the whole book of sacrificing something valuable in your life. And what's more valuable than a father to his son, a son to an Abba? We're going to focus the whole learning of korbanot, of sacrifices, of giving something up to the Ribono Shel Olam, based on the Ishbitzer. The Me'ashilach, the Ishbitzer explains, Avram Avinu knew that even if he'd shecht Yitzchak would still come back to life or stay alive, somehow. He says it's mukhrach ha-metziyut. It had to be. Why did it have to be? Because God doesn't take back His word. And what did God tell Avram Avinu? Ki beyitzchak yikareh lecha zara, right? Because your offspring will be through Yitzchak, meaning it's going to be through him. And yet, what is Avram Avinu? What is he told by God? Go take him and shecht him. So the Ishbitzer says, Avraham Avinu knew somehow that Yitzchak would still have to be alive. Meaning that which he's willing to sacrifice would still be there even after he sacrifices it. And this is a beautiful, beautiful concept. Do you know what we have to let go of all the time? We have to let go of what we think has to be the reality. All the time. How often do we work so hard to attain certain levels of intellect? To attain certain very deep notions, like thought out things in our mind and in our soul. Working very hard in achieving certain states of mind, reaching certain goals. And yet we see, but wait a second, I can't grow unless I let go of this. But what do we say to ourselves? But what about all the things I worked so hard on to get here? God wants me to just give it up? And it's a much longer conversation than when we have right now. But just to throw it out there right now, do you think that when you feel you have to bring a korban, that God needs you to sacrifice something holy? We're not talking about just sacrificing your Yetzer Hara. That we should be excited to get rid of. We're talking about sacrificing whatever I thought God was yesterday. However high I thought I was yesterday. If I want to grow in this world, yesterday doesn't exist anymore. Sacrificing holy things. Sacrificing spiritual heights and saying, I need to get even closer. More korban, lihit karev. Do you think God lets you to get rid of it? Or do you trust the Ribono Shel Olam that right now I have to do something else? And I believe in my heart of hearts that Ribono Shel Olam is storing whatever I'm sacrificing and is going to give it back to me exactly when I need it. For instance, and I can give you a very personal example. Today, I had a very, very, very special hour with someone that I've been learning with. Talk about avodat hanefesh, the work of the soul. The learning. It's not even learning. It's learning davening. It's everything together. Just talking about tachlis, the life, what we have to go through in this world. And like many people that sit by a therapist, or that are in the moment of a very deep and high concert, or whatever it is, or a special tefillah, in the moment everything is perfect. What's the problem? What happens when I leave the Dalet Amos? What happens when that's not happening? I can't even tell you how many emails I get sometimes from people that feel like they get messed up when they go to certain shiurim, not from the shiur itself, but from the free fall of what happens afterwards. They say, how do I hold on to this? For 3 days afterwards, I'm trying so hard to hold on to it. And I always say to them, but let me ask you a question. After you leave the shiur, do you think that you're supposed to still be sitting in that person's base midrash? If so, God would say, just sit in the base midrash forever. The fact that we keep on transitioning, moving, growing, changing locations, growing in life, is because we're supposed to deal with the world of attaining something and then continuing with it in our lives. And if we believe in the Ribono Shel Olam enough, and if we cried over that which we learned enough, you don't have to try so hard to keep on holding on to it, to that feeling of what it felt like when things were perfect. Kind of like what I feel when I'm with this chavrusa of mine, who really explained to me today this secret. He says, if you trust the Ribono Shel Olam enough, if you cry over it enough, if you do hisbodedus over that which you felt, that which you learned, and you come to tears, don't worry. Rabbi Shlomo said the Ribono Shel Olam has a special argaz there. He has a special treasure chest in Shemayim, where he takes all the tears that were ever shed from a real place, and when you need them the most in your life, he lets you know that you were a man or a woman that was capable of feeling, that was capable of crying, that was capable of pouring it all out. Only if you're willing to sacrifice. What does that mean, to sacrifice? Not to take a cow and shecht it per se. If you're willing to offer it back to the Ribono Shel Olam. Avraham Avinu knew Yitzchak would still be there because God promises, Ki b'Yitzchak yikareh l'chazara. But God, you want me to shecht him right now? That's right. I want to see if you're willing to get utmost close to me. I don't want you to shecht him. I want to see if you're willing to give up on everything, that which is most precious to you, just for the sake of being close to me. When Aaron HaKohen's two sons die, there are two words of consolation, which the Torah writes in Parshat Vayikra. The two words that really, for any bereaved parent, shelo neda, these are the only two words that can console any bereaved parent. And what are those two words? Bikrovai akadesh. Through those who are closest to me, bikrovai, through those that were offered to me, bikrovai, through my korbanot, through the offering of being close, akadesh, I sanctify my name. I sanctify myself. The Torah of the korbanos is not just, can you shecht your yetzer hara? That's an obvious avoda that we need to figure out. And the Alter Rebbe has the most profound teaching, and I think it's in Likutei Torah, Torah Or, about Adam ki akriv mikem korban Lashem mina behema. What's the whole thing in Tanya about the nefesh bahamit? That a person has to shecht his nefesh bahamit, his animalistic soul. It's the whole avoda of Sefer Vayikra. But you know, we have to also makriv, we have to offer up to Hashem. We have to offer up to God the possibility that everything that I built up in my mind, heart, and soul about who you were, God, yesterday, I'm willing to makriv it. I'm willing to say, it doesn't even exist. I'm offering it back up to you. Now something new. You know what hitchadshut means? Feeling renewed? You think feeling renewed means that I do the same thing every day, but I have a little different of a spice in my move? Like something, I feel a little bit different today. I'm dancing a little bit differently. I have a different step going on. But really, everything I'm doing the same thing every day. Ma pitam. Hitchadshut by the real tzaddikim, and Rabbi Shlomo spoke about this. Are you mamish willing to makriv all your theses, all your theories about God, and realize that, like we said yesterday, God's not a theory. He's a story. And a story keeps on continuing over and over. Mamish, Ein Sof. Ein Sof. So tonight what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at a very, very small piece. It's really one page. And it's the setting as to why a child has to really start learning the book of korbanot, but the type of korban that we just spoke about. Not dafka the korbanot of shechting, because really, I'm terrified when my daughter will come home from whatever kita it is they teach you Vayikra and ask me, how come we don't have shlamim? Or what is shlamim? Forget about how come we don't have. I mean, what is shlamim? Or what is a korban chatat? What is all this stuff? I remember telling you, I once walked with a very, very big, prominent rabbi. Not exactly from the frummest, but from the borderline worlds, whatever you want to call it. And he said to me that in his humble opinion, Sefer Vayikra should be done with. We're done with Sefer Vayikra. We have a new sivuv of reading. But Sefer Vayikra we're done with. Tonight we're going to see how much that statement was absolute shtuyot sheba shtuyot. Like they say in Hebrew, nonsense in tomato juice. Shtuyot b'mitzah gvaniyot. All right, b'chevra, please, I know there's a lot going on, a lot of motion and everything. Let's really stay focused. If you could put your phones on vibrate or turn them off, because it won't work in here anyway because there's no reception, chasdei Hashem, it'd be the best. All right. Just by the title alone, you can see why this is essential for children to be starting to learn with this. Okay, let's go inside. Vayikra al Moshe. Friends, God is calling every one of us. Vayikra el Moshe. God called out to Moshe. The Medrash says that only Moshe Rabbeinu heard this calling. No one else heard it. It's a very famous Medrash. This Vayikra this book called Vayikra. He's calling out. Did it get to the back? Everyone has more or less? This Vayikra, it wasn't just like, okay, and God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, you have a whole thing of karbanos. It was a Vayikra, the calling, it was such a loud call that really it went everywhere. However, only Moshe Rabbeinu heard it. That's what the Midrash says. There are many different perushim on that. Tonight we're going to understand what happens when you hear something that you think everyone hears also, but at the end of the day, you feel like you're the only one that hears it. You feel like you're the only one that hears that which you think everyone else also just heard. And here I want you to know, there is a God calling which is a different calling for every one of us. But the deepest question is, are you hearing it? Are you listening to it? Vayikra el Moshe, I want to bless you. By the way, this piece, just remember, this was in the middle of a concert. This is what we're learning right now. This was in the middle of a concert in Long Beach, California in March 1991. Right? This was on his brother's first yahrzeit. His twin brother's first yahrzeit. And he was giving a concert in Long Beach by his nephews and nieces that lived there. Vayikra el Moshe, I want to bless you and me, that whenever God is calling us, whenever God needs us for something special, we should mamish hear it. Imagine after Moshe Rabbeinu heard God calling him, he would say to the Yidden, did you hear something? No? And then Moshe Rabbeinu will say, I think I'm going to go see my therapist. I think there might be a mistake here. I think I'm hearing voices. Am I crazy? So now this next paragraph, usually you'd never say this because I come from LA. A lot of people walk the streets there hearing certain voices. Not exactly God voices. They hear a bunch of different things. Like one time, this is a great Purim story. One time, my friend was visiting from Israel. We were sitting in a restaurant and this woman comes up to my friend. She was hanging around the shul a little bit. Very interesting woman. I'm sure you've seen some of those where you live, Zelda. And no, guests. I meant guests. No. And this woman comes up to my friend and says, pointing to me, listen, he's the devil. And my friend is this guy who just got out of the army. He knew English just by watching American movies. He looked at her and he said, spare me. Never forget it.
What is that?
Spare me. That was the end of that. But that was like a normal thing that happened to us, that happened to my chevra all the time in Los Angeles. We're not talking about that here, okay? At all. And it's I want to make a point out of this, because so often people hear a calling, and why don't they follow through with it? Because the first thought they have after hearing a certain shlichus is, who's going to believe me? Or, what are people going to say? And yet, why do you think you have to tell anybody that God told you this? Just do what you have to do. If your gut reaction is, I got to go tell everyone that God spoke to me, that means God probably didn't speak to you. If your gut reaction is, after you hear a voice from Shamayim saying, wow, I mamish got to get my act together to fulfill what I just heard, then it's probably mamish for real. But if your gut reaction is, I got to go be machzir everyone b'tshuva, hey, God spoke to me. What are we kidding here? This is big business. This is big, the Baal Tshuva movement. This is big business. I got to really do something big. If you really hear the Ribbon Shalom talking to you, you don't start asking people, did you hear that? Or telling them, listen to what I heard. You become a living proof. You become a living example. And I guarantee you, anyone that has done something crucial for Am Yisrael, for real, It's only because they heard the Ribbono Shel Olam tell them, you have to do this. I'm talking about the real big things in the world. Those real things that have really shaken us up, that have changed the course of Jewish history. It's only because they heard and they didn't start amalekizing their hearing. Of, is it for real? Will it last? Don't think about will it last or not. You got to go and do what you have to do. You see what it is. Look at how Rabbi Shlomo says it. If you hear something that no one else hears, it's because it was meant just for you. Can't you trust yourself a little bit? Why can't you trust yourself? What do you think God is doing? Is God ashamed to call on you? You see what it is? If you know the secret of... Okay, now this connects what we learned last week. This is beautiful. If you know the secret of the Mishkan, and what was the Mishkan all about? If you know the secret of putting it back together. Do you want to explain? Last week we learned about Eile Pikudei Mishkan, Mishkan Ha'edut. Moshe Rabbeinu ends Sefer Shmot by showing us that the Mishkan that which he erected kept on falling down every day. Some say twice a day, some say 3 times a day, like we learned last week. And yet every day when he would put this Mishkan together, remember the Yeriot, it wasn't just like a little Lego thing, it was a big, big, big deal, very complicated Mishkan, very complicated tabernacle. And yet every time Moshe Rabbeinu put it together, it fell apart, and he put it back together, and he put it apart. And every time, Mamash, this would have kept on happening. But Moshe Rabbeinu was leaving us with telling us in Sefer Shmot, listen, you can go through big miracles, you can go through small miracles, you can even have Hashem talking to you on Mount Sinai. That's not what counts. What counts is, how do you put your life back together? That's if you're able to do that, you're a Gibor. If you're witness to hear God's voice on Mount Sinai, that's just because God chose to give you something extraordinary in the world. But that which you attain is if you can get your life back together after it falls apart. So now here's another kind of like a warning, not a warning, but here's a clear directive as to how do you know if what you hear is for real? If you know the secret of the Mishkan, if you know the secret of putting it back together, meaning your own life back together, then you hear God's voice and you know God is talking to you. If you take a year off of life to sit like this on Venice Beach, or to walk the streets of Holland or Belgium, it doesn't matter what it is, and it's going to come to you from a place of shanti. It's going to come to you from this place of, God is talking to me. It only comes when you keep on having to get your life back together. And in the midst of re-erecting the own Mishkan in your life, while Hashem sees the sweat and tears, the Mesiras Nefesh that you have for Am Yisrael and for your own family, through that, the voice will come down. Not when you're not working. Adam la'amal yulad. That's what we were meant for in this world. Not just to work, but to hear the voice of the Ribbono Shel Olam when we work. And that's a big difference. You know, people always tell you, come on, you weren't here to sleep, you were put into this world in order to work. No, you weren't. You were put into this world just to work? No. You were put into this world to hear God's voice. But how do you hear God's voice? When your Mishkan falls apart and you put it back together. Big, 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 big difference between those two statements. Huge. Shamayim v'aretz. Mamish, heaven and earth difference. Now he's going to connect a very important thing. One more thing. Why is the Aleph of Vayikra, of the word Vayikra, in Aleph Ze'ira? Why is it written small? Right? Everyone knows the first word of this Vayikra that God called out to Moshe Rabbeinu is written with the small Aleph at the end of it. I just remembered that around, I think it was 2 years ago, Rav Pinchas Scheinberg from the Torah Or was Nifter. I think it was just about 2 years ago. And my wife had the schus of being the Rebbitzon's shamus, and she was actually at our wedding, his Rebbitzon. And I went to the funeral. After everything was over, I couldn't get close, but I'm a Kohen, I couldn't even get close to anything. But I went with a good friend of mine, Nachman Futterman. We went after the whole thing was over, and we had a cab take us up to Har Zaitim, kind of close to where he was buried. Nachman said, I'm going to go and find the kever, the tari, the fresh kever, and Shlomo, you wait here by the cab. So, you know those streets up in Har Zaitim, they're so narrow, sometimes you have to wait, God knows how long till cars pass that, because it's not, you can't, it's crazy, Shloneda. So, I was waiting, and finally Nachman comes back, and we're so eager to go, and then suddenly we see what looked like a very tzabrochen yid, very broken down yid, that like put his hand on my shoulder and basically said, if Shal Gam, can I get out of here with you? Har Zaitim. We said, sure. He sat in the front, we sat in the back, and we felt so amazing. Wow, look at us. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I felt so amazing. Wow, we're helping this Jew out. It's such a special thing. And we see the guy's going on. He's shuckling away in the front seat. And he says to us, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the whole Torah, right? He turns to us in the back. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the whole Torah. I said, yeah. He said, so Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who wrote the small Aleph, right? In the word Vayikra. When God called out to him, he humbled himself and he wrote a small Aleph. He said, yeah. He said, well, we know that there's no such thing as leftover ink in the Torah. Every word was perfect. Every letter was perfect. What happened to the leftover ink that was left over from the big Aleph? If every letter was originally supposed to be exactly the same size, what happened to the leftover ink of the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu, of the Aleph? So he says to us that midrash that said, it's a beautiful thing, that Moshe Rabbeinu, remember when he comes down from Har Sinai at the end of Ki Tisa, and it says that he had to put a masveh on his face, the Moshe Rabbeinu, no one could look at him, it says Ki Karan Or Panav, because his face was mamash shining. So Midrash says that God took the ink that was left over from the Aleph of Vayikra and mamash smeared it all over Moshe Rabbeinu's face. And then before we could say anything, he said, and he got out of the car and he just left right away. And I remember for weeks thinking, like looking at people and just wondering, like people that make themselves small, what about the leftover ink, Where's the leftover ink? So you ever see people that you can't gaze at them, you can't look at them like the sun, you just mamish can't look at them. Like you could but you start to get uncomfortable, and it's not because they make you feel nervous, well maybe they do, but it's not because there's anything wrong with them. It's because whoever makes themselves small in this world, when God calls out to you, it humbles the living daylights out of you. And you make yourself so small. Eventually you make yourself very big. But where's the leftover ink? I always, since that person came into that cab and left before we could even discuss it further, I'm always looking at people to see who has any leftover ink. Or maybe it's the reason why I keep on turning my head here. I don't gaze on anyone in here. Someone's got offended. I say, how come whenever we finally make eye contact, you look at the other person? Duh. Because you guys look like miniature, like mini-me's, each and every one of you in this room, because there's something very, very special going on when people get together learning Torah. Very special. Anyway, that's the Aleph Ze'ira. That's the small Aleph in the word Vayikra. Why, one more thing. Why is the Aleph of Vayikra written small? And look how he says it so beautifully. If you or I think that we did something in my life, meaning that we accomplished something, and I'm already very accomplished, I'll never do anything. I have to remember that I am always at the beginning. And this has to do with the way that we explained Korban in the beginning of Shiur. If I don't realize that I'm always beginning, I'm holding on to yesterday's spiritual heights, I'm not doing anything today. If I'm banking on where I reached yesterday, today, not just that it's meaningless, tznicha. I'm how do you say tznicha? I'm free falling. It's not like, okay, I'm not going to grow today. Mapitom. There's no such thing as Yiddishkeit as standing. Standing means you're falling. Standing means you're falling. Mamish like the kevs, yeah, it's gewalt. It's gewalt. So Rabbi Shlomo says, it says, I'll never do anything. I have to remember that I'm always at the beginning. But you see what it is? Only the ones who have the guts to listen are the ones who do so much in their lives. Only, this is such an important line, only the ones who have the guts to listen do so much in their lives. You know what that means? What does it mean, tachlis? Let's be real. What does it mean to listen? Are we waiting to hear a voice? Again, those people that wait to hear voices, they're the ones that tell everyone that they heard a voice. But what does it mean? We know what it means to hear a voice. It means that working. It means that reassembling. It means that getting my life back together again, over and over again. Do you know how much guts that takes to reassemble the Mishkan in your life? Let's be real. I barely know any of you for real in this room. Those who I know a little bit. The little bit I know about your own Mishkans that have fallen apart a million times in your life. You know what you have to do for 1 second in your spiritual life besides knowing I have to keep on working on myself? We said this last week also. The pat on the back is just as important as the push and the shove to continue on. To say, you have been able to do much more than you ever thought. If you're still around today, going strong, with Hashem, keeping a family together, you're definitely doing more than whatever you thought you'd be able to do. But it takes a lot of guts to listen while you're actively doing something. To listen while you're actively doing something takes a lot of omits. Why? Because it's the hardest thing to listen while you think that you're the balabait. While you're busy reassembling something, working, getting your life back together, do you know how much it takes to, while you're doing that, to realize, okay, there's something bigger than me. It's bigger than whatever I'm doing. My life is bigger than whatever I've made it to until now. To listen while you're going through that, Rabbi Shlomo says, takes a lot of guts. That's mamish ometz. That's amitz. We'll get into it in a second. Actually, we're going to end with that. How does God call you? You think you tune in and God says, tune in now, be quiet. God is speaking. I want to share something awesome with you. And listen to the most beautiful thing in the world. And this Torah, this last piece is for you and I today in this dar. When God spoke to Yitzchak, it sounded like his father Avraham. Remember we learned this many times? When Hashem spoke to Yitzchak, it was in the voice of his father Avraham Avinu. When God spoke to Yaakov, it sounded like it was the voice of Yitzchak. But how did God speak to Avraham Avinu? How did it sound? It was awesome. But when God spoke to Avram, it was the voice of Avraham, because if it was the voice of Terach, it wouldn't be a voice he'd listen to. Right? So when you don't have anyone to kind of bank it on, next generation, and God needs to tell you something, it's your own voice. You know how much guts it takes to believe that your own voice is the voice of the Ribono Shel Olam? And I want to be very careful here. Chas v'shalom, there shouldn't be any weird kfira thoughts right now. Okay? Listen to this. Rabbi Nachman says, every person today can attain Ruach HaKodesh. Really? I thought that was done with the last three prophets, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. That's nevuah. That's prophecy. Ruach HaKodesh, Rabbi Nachman says, when a person mitboded, mefaresh sichato, beino levein kono, zehu mamish bechinas Ruach HaKodesh. That when a person is basically doing his bodus, when a person is telling his story to God, and you're really void of everything else, what comes out, those words that come out from utmost closeness, those words are Ruach HaKodesh. And Reb Nachman says over there, basically, Sefer Tehillim, which is all Ruach HaKodesh, was one long hisbodedus session between David HaMelech and the Ribbono Shel Olam. That was, Tehillim is one long hitbodedut session. You see, it takes so much guts to believe that statement from Rabbi Nachman. Because none of us really think, the second we become a little bit real, we're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be humble. How in the world do I think that has anything to do with my life right now? Where is humility falling in here? If I'm going to go down to the field and start talking, and Ruach HaKodesh is going to come down. Let's be tachlis. So Rabbi Shlomo says like this, sometimes I meet people, and I think to myself, that if God would talk to their children, it couldn't be with their voice of their father or mother. Friends, I don't know your parents. I don't know your grandparents. But I'm sure your grandparents were the holiest. And if not, let it be your own voice. Can you imagine if children would begin their entrance into Yiddishkeit learning that they might be able to trust their own voice when they matmid in avodat Hashem, instead of running to the Rebbe, waiting for the manhig to say something, waiting for that demagogue to come and he has the right answer. Look what happened to us. No one ever told us that we could really be the highest of the high, for real. Not just like, oh, you're the sweetest. On level al derech ha'avodah, like Reb Shlomo just mapped it out over here, based on what he said about the Mishkan. No, can you imagine if when children begin to get turned on to the God, begin to learn Torah, they realize that the whole point of man in this world is not just to work and be a gibor and have a career. Those are essential things to maintain, to establish a certain lifestyle. But to know what to do in this world, which really everyone falls under that category of what am I really doing in this world? You work over and over and over again to hear God's voice in between the cracks. And guess what? Most big neshamas today, it's not going to be in the voice of their father. It's going to be like Avram Avinu. And it's going to take a lot of guts to realize that it's through your own voice, that which you've been longing to hear for so long. Which explains why Rabbi Nachman was so adamant on hitbodedut. You know, hitbodedut is not this thing that, if it happens to be that once every 7 months you're alone without anybody, bring it on. Rabbi Tom, every single day. Rav Arush has been saying recently that used to be that used to be an hour, had to do it budget for an hour. He says in today's day and age, because of the Yeridat Dorot, because it's so crazy, the descendant of how the Dorot have come down, how the generations have come down, is that really 20 minutes today is equivalent to what it was once. Like if a person can mamash just 20 minutes, pull off a little Ruach HaKodesh action, which is what we said his Bodut is, that was like what it was back then, an hour. But what we would save, how many lost souls we would save, if when they're young, when they start learning Torah, the first thing they learn is Vayikra, Aleph Vayikra, Vayikra El Moshe. That the Ribbono Shel Olam calls to everyone. And sometimes, Chavra, sometimes God calls out to you something that's very loud. You think everyone hears it. You look at the world, you're like, wow, look at what happened. How come no one's doing anything? Because that was meant just for you to see. Like usually what happens to us today, we look at what's going on in the world, and we say to ourselves, is everyone am I nuts or is everyone nuts? Right? No. Everyone's for sure nuts, but that's not the point right now. Mm-hmm. The point is that if you heard it, it was meant for you. This ties into how Avram Avinu became Avram Avinu. Heitzitz alav Baal Abira. Remember, the Midrash is saying, Avram Avinu is looking around, he's saying, what about? No one sees that there's someone that puts the stars in the sky and the sun. I don't understand. Everyone lives under the stars, under the sun, under the moon. No one sees that there's a Baal Abira. No one sees that there's a master to all this, one placing all this. And the Midrash says, Avram Avinu is told, hey, if you're the one to see it, then you're the one to crown the king. Don't wait. Don't wait for anybody else. But if you're going to do what you do, crowning the king, to form a movement, let's look at our history. It's garnished. There has never been more machloket amongst camps. Not amongst different camps. I think we've always had, Baruch Hashem, Amkshe Orev style, we've had a lot of this stuff going on for a long time. But amongst same camps. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have infinite compassion on our souls to really speak to us in ways where we don't just hear the words, we have a sea of clarity that comes down with it. Because we need a lot of clarity right now. A lot of clarity. It's never before been a time amongst Am Yisrael where black is white, white is black, left is right, right is left. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Every box is a coffin. It's an unbelievable thing. But we need a lot of omets. We need a lot of guts. Not to wait to hear a calling, to do what we need to do, and to keep our ears open while we're doing it. And next week we'll see, Bezrat Hashem, next Monday night will be the final Purim preparation Shiur for how that is really the whole avoda of the height of the intoxication which take place on Purim. At that moment, when you are what we call in my old apartment shtimmered, right? When you're gone shebagan, something happens. Something happens. You don't need the emes is you don't need 1 ounce of wine to hear the Rebbeinu Shalom talking to you. You need nothing besides a heart that cries out to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So let's not wait for Purim to reach these high levels. Let's start getting it on ready, B'ezrat Hashem, right now, from Maariv, which we'll be having right now. Thank you so much for coming, everyone, and we'll see you next week, B'ezrat Hashem.